state of the project for student success plan. So a few things that I'm going to cover today. First, some new adoptions that we've done over the past year that are both complete and in progress. Some of the main improvements made over the past 12 months. 12 months ago, we were using, the latest version was SSP 2.4. We're now on 2.6.1. So I'll walk through some of the major improvements that were made during that time. Then we'll walk through the features of the current version, some of the new things that are out, talk about what we're working on for 2.7 currently. We've got a few schools contributing features there. And then we'll talk about key success criteria for implementations and our new implementation process that we developed. So start off, new adoptions. Last year, we did an adoption with Broward College out of South Florida. 4 campuses, pretty widely used there. That went live in August of last year. And they are now in a full implementation throughout all 4 campuses plus online. Currently, we're working on an implementation with Jefferson College in St. Louis. And that implementation includes the learning analytics piece that I'll be talking about a little bit later in the presentation. We're just starting an implementation with Southern University at Shreveport. We just are starting a implementation with University of Manchester, and then the GISC project. All 4, Jefferson, Southern, University of Manchester, and GISC are current implementations. So main improvements between last year to this year, last May to this May. Under Caseload Management, full directory search. So an advisor can now search not only users added to SSP, but also search students in external data. We've redesigned the different ways that students can be added to SSP. It's always been a little bit of a stumbling block for people. So there's now 3 different ways, and we've made it easier now to add a student. So a student can be added with an early alert. A student can be added, which I'll show you in a second, with the full directory search results. So you can simply double-click a student that was searched from external data and add them very easily. And then the normal add, edit student, search for a student ID or some other criteria, find them, save it, and those students added. We added watch student functionality, which is kind of a secondary coach process. This was funded by Broward College last year, and it's being used by all institutions that are using SSP 2.6 now. And what that allows an advisor to do is almost be a secondary coach. So a lot of times we've got advisors and we've got student success offices or other affiliated offices that also advise the student. And so now any number of people can watch a student and they'll get all the same updates, emails, and everything else that the normal advisor gets, but they just are not considered the normal advisor and they're not sourced that way in the SIS. We added service group to search criteria. Service group is one of the most heavily used categories for students. And then we also added a number of bulk actions from the caseload management side. The CSV export, we can bulk send email, we can give program status changes, and then we can watch or unwatch students, all from the caseload management pane or from search results. Some of the other items, main tool, we added a success indicators dashboard, which I'll show in a little more detail shortly. We've got an integration now with Smarter Measure so we can display their test results. We've expanded the financial aid data to include a number of new fields, and we've also made the main tool hideable. So previously with the permission structure, the main tool was available to just about every role. We've now made it where you can turn that off, and that was brought up due to some FERPA questions that some schools had. So there's much more flexibility now in which tools display or not display. Redesign the action plan user interface and made the intake form more flexible and configurable. So the questions that get asked now can be configured and more customizable. Some other changes, early alert, we added an LTI component. So SSP is now an LTI tool provider. So that makes integrations with LMSs for early alerts, for faculty SSO, much easier. We added referral notifications and a reopen option for early alerts. We now have a previous alert summary on the submission form, added some reminders and some expanded reporting, which I'll show you in a minute. Overall, there were some UI improvements and some major performance improvements beginning in version 2.5 for the person record and the map. So some little more detail on some of the SSP 2.6 features. So I'd indicated full directory search earlier. So this is a search result, and you can see with the arrows, the student is italicized, showing that they were sourced from external data. You can simply double-click the student, select a student type, and assign the coach, and save it, and the student's added. So much easier than it has been in the past. You don't have to search separately in external data for the student. So it's much easier to add students from the search pane. The other thing I mentioned was the watch list. So we added a tab on the left pane, the Caseload Management pane, which will display not only the advisor's caseload, but also their watch list. And then you can activate the bulk actions there from the drop-down for students either in your caseload or on your watch list. You can bulk watch students from search results or bulk unwatch students also from search results. There's also, above the tabs in the main tool, a watch or unwatch student list for easy one-click access. We redesigned the caseload assignment, made it easier, a little more user-friendly. I mentioned the success indicators. So one of the main benefits of SSP is it provides a full suite of data all in one place for an advisor. So when an advisor sits down to meet with a student, they've got all the information that they need to adequately advise that student on what they need to be advised on. The success indicators is a big step. Along with this, we took some of the information off of the dashboard tab, moved it to either details, or we created a separate financial tab. So we moved all the financial aid information to a single tab, and that made room on the interface for these success tables. You can see there's 3 different boxes there. We've got student indicators on the left. Those include GPA, registered, completion rate, etc. In the middle, we've got the intervention indicators, so intake form, open alerts, if the student has any open alerts or open tasks, and then are they on plan or off plan for their map. They're all color-coded, as you can see, so green is good, the mustard yellow color is okay, and red is poor. All 3 of these, or I'm sorry, the left 2, the student indicators and the intervention indicators are out of the box how they come. So there's not a way to add additional student indicators or additional intervention indicators to those two panes. The risk indicators on the right here, and in this case you can see it's got the student's current coursework. Those are fully configurable, so you can add or remove risk indicators in the admin tab. So you can add, if we added a sixth one, it would fall in the open space there. If we added a seventh or eighth, we'd get a scroll bar and be able to scroll up and down. So those are completely configurable. They don't have to be courses. It can be really any data within SSP. And the real benefit of this is obvious. It gives, right on the dashboard, the coach or the advisor, real quick, they can look at the reds or the yellows and see what they may need to address with the student. Okay? All of the success indicators on all three panes are configurable as far as the scale. So, for instance, we've got GPA up here. Depending on how an institution wants to rank or rate the students, here it's 3 to 4 is high. So if a GPA was between 3.0 and 4.0, they would be in green. Completely configurable for how the institution wants to rate high, good, okay, or poor. I mentioned the action plan redesign. So this makes it much easier to access the challenges and referrals and add them to the action plan. They can be done by drag and drop, double click, or clicking the button. They can also be removed easily. You can add custom action plans. So really some big improvements in the action plans to make it a little more user-friendly. I mentioned some early alert reports. So these were courtesy of Broward College. Broward does a lot of early alerting. That's one of their big keys to getting advisors involved in student advising. So here on the early alert portlet, it's got a list of all the early alerts that this particular student has. So it shows if they're open or closed, what the last follow-up is. And this is hideable. If there's no data there, nothing will display. But it gives a faculty member who's opening an early alert on a student good insight to how many open early alerts this student already has as they are opening that other early alert. A couple new reports around early alerts. The course count report. This just gives an overview, total number of students and total number of alerts per course. So if you've got 25 students and 500 alerts, that would obviously be a flag. So it just gives some metrics on those. A real nice report is this new early alert reasons report. So the reasons within the early alert portlet are customizable. And once that's done, the early alert reasons report will give the number of occurrences and the number of alerts for each of the configured reasons. One other thing on early alerts is we've added a referral email and carbon copy. So this is really around the watch student functionality and the ability to loop in additional tutors, success offices, other people involved into the early alerting process. Intake tool. So we made the intake tool more configurable. It wasn't as configurable as many other pieces of SSP in the past. So now schools can more customize the intake form to exactly the questions that they want to ask. So this is all done out of the admin menu. So those are the major features for SSP 2.6. We're currently working on a number of features for 2.7. Many are sponsored by Sinclair Community College. We've got a few also sponsored by St. Petersburg College. So we'll go through a few of those. Historical coach assignments. So if a student changes coaches, now we've got previous coach information on the coach tab so that there's a history there, an audit trail, if you will, of the coach. We've got some additional fields in some reports. Case management, we've added a couple of fields for email address and active major. And we've added some additional fields to the general student report, GPA, special service groups, and academic standing. One of the other features we're working on is to make the search more beneficial. So now, instead of just the drop-down allowing you to select one category, one major, one coach, one early alert status, you now, in 2.7, will have the ability to option click or control click and select multiple items from those drop-downs to expand the search. Makes it much more useful. We've added a couple of new GPA fields to be 4 total now. A local GPA. This would be a GPA sourced from the SIS that is local to the school. And then a program GPA, so within a major. So that makes now 4 GPAs that SSP has. I did want to talk a little bit about learning analytics. That's always a hot topic, and this is just very high level. But SSP is preparing to be the action leg of the learning analytics diamond. You can see that in the dashboard and the risk indicators that I had showed earlier. Basic high level, very high level learning analytics workflow is that a tool provider will send a learning event to a learning resource store. The data is analyzed. Students are classified based on historical results. So the data is there. Somebody crunches the data, looks at historical results with students who have the same situation, analyzes that, and then sends an early alert to SSP. So there's a couple ways that SSP could identify the student, either through a roster service or we pull from a repo. We're working on both of those concepts now. And then that learning analytics processor, as I mentioned, creates the early alert in SSP. So that's really a high level. You've probably seen this. So the action leg is down at the bottom. After those items happen, the data is analyzed on the right, and then the early alert is sent. And so that's where SSP is very well positioned to be that action step in that learning analytics diamond. So some other 2.7 highlights that I'll just really quickly review. We're adding a preview function for message templates. So right now, message templates are HTML markup. They're difficult to, for an admin or somebody else to kind of wade through that. So we're adding a preview function so that they can see it before they save it. Kind of eliminates all that HTML markup in there. The export to CSV file that a lot of schools use, we're making that customizable so the user can select which fields they want to include in that file on export. We're adding another external database table for non-course data. We're going to display a list of watchers for that watch student, similar to how we're displaying the coach history. We're going to have a watch student list. We're going to have the transcript course on the map only after the student passes the course. So if the student doesn't pass the course, it obviously wouldn't show up on the map. We're going to expand the journal track step details, which is getting more and more use by more and more schools, they're seeing it as a way to make their advising process and their reporting process more efficient. So we're going to make that a little bit easier to use so that when you go into the track and it displays, if you're familiar with that, every step and detail that has been checked automatically opens. So a lot of times you could have half a dozen to a dozen steps or details, and you have to open each folder to see which one you have. So we're going to make it so that when you go to the journal tool and you display the track step details, only those steps that have details selected will display. That should make it a lot easier. We're going to, with more and more schools using maps and map templates, we're going to bulk deactivate or allow users to bulk deactivate those templates. A lot of times they go for 2 years and then they create a whole new set of templates. And right now it's very cumbersome to go in and deactivate a map plan. So we're going to make that much easier. We're also going to add a folder structure to that so that you can classify those however you see fit, by major or by school or however. We're going to decouple the school ID from the username. Easier means to access success failures. That is more of a troubleshooting help. So when scheduled tasks that update from the SIS on a nightly basis fail, we're going to put some reporting in there to be able to access it and be able to troubleshoot it a little bit easier. Hopefully make it easy enough that the actual institution can troubleshoot and find out what failed. We're going to add a student home campus field with the number of implementations that we're getting that are multi-campus. Add a report for student challenges. Fix up the map experience, and then kill a couple of bugs, and you can see those. So one of the last things I'm going to talk about is some of the key success criteria for our implementation process. We revised our implementation process last year to give it much more of a structure, and we've had real good success with it that far. We've cut down the implementation time from averaging 6+ months to now we can get it down to 3 to 4 months, which is really a big improvement. So currently, this is our new implementation process. So installation, obviously, we always install on the client's system, usually in a dev environment. And then the new feature that we added is an implementation planning session. And that is generally led by Jason Elwood, who is our product manager and implementation consultant. We do a 2-day on-site. So we meet at the customer with the customer. We give them a demo. We review roles and permissions. We talk about the schedule. And most importantly, we talk about what we call the to-be processes. Because one of the most important pieces of an SSP implementation is the culture change that is involved at the school itself. It's not just an installation and a configuration. It's also an operational change. And that's really the biggest issue most of the time. So we do the 2-day on-site. We go over those processes. We document the to-be processes. And then we go through what we call an implementation block schedule. And what we did, instead of throwing at them a 40 or 50-page configuration guide and 25 or 30 external data tables, each containing multiple fields at them and just try to help them, we've broken it up into more of an agile process. So we go from 6, usually probably the average is 6 or 7, but we can go up to 10 2-week sprints. And what we do is we'll meet with the customer and the project team. We'll go through that sprint's external database tables, explain what those are, how they fit into the application, how they're used, and we'll also go through the associated configuration guide for those database tables. So we break those up differently for each implementation, but those each correspond throughout. So we set that up. The timing is really based upon the go-live date and the scope of implementation. So if a client's not going to use the map tool or My GPS, we can cut it down to probably 4 to 5 on the low end blocks. If they're using all the features and we've got plenty of time, like I said, we go up to 10. Also included in there is data validation, which is obviously a critical step since SSP is data-driven. It's run on data, and that's why it's used. So we go through both UI, visual checks, as well as different queries that we have that we validate the data. So we do that every 2 weeks. A chunk of external data, a chunk of configuration, and then validation. So that when we're done with that sprint process, we're essentially ready to roll. The only thing remaining after that is the training, which we provide, functional training, train the trainer model, and then system admin training, what we call care and feeding of the application. So that's our current implementation process. Like I said, we've cut it down to as fast as 3 months now, as opposed to before it was 6+ months. Some of the success criteria that really are critical for a successful implementation is the availability of resources at the client institution. So mainly on the IT side, for installation, authentication. They're mainly involved up front, but they're also critical throughout the entire process. Secondarily, the SIS owner is critical throughout the entire process. That's the person that knows the data, knows the system, knows how to get the data out of it, knows how to format the data properly to get it into the SSP external database. Then we've got the LMS owner, if we're doing a LTI integration with them. So if there's any online component, we're doing the LTI for early alert integration. And then there's the functional staff. So we usually have 2 functional staff at least involved at a managerial or lead level. So the availability of all 4 of those departments is critical. If we don't have one of those, it slows the implementation down considerably. The second and probably most important key to success is the ability to change the culture. So we try to facilitate the culture change and the operational changes that go on when a school who previously handled student success and advising any number of ways, from passing around Excel spreadsheets to, writing things down on paper, and different departments within the school did things different ways. To get a school to change their culture enough to use SSP across all of the advising departments and any ancillary departments that may interact with the advising staff, to change that culture is a big deal. First, we try to get buy-in from all departments. We identify a champion at the school who is going to go and push the implementation, communicate the benefits and the changes. Some of the changes usually are not taken positively, so we try to assist in that area as we can, identify best practices, and implement those. One of the most important things is come to quick agreement on the to-be processes. So again, this is around the culture change, and then to foster communication. So those are the success criteria that we strive for during an implementation and that we communicate to the project team at the client site or at the institution in order to be successful. So that wraps it up for today. Any questions? Yeah.
Hey, so I really like this iterative sort of sprint-based approach to bringing in the external data. I think that's fantastic. Is it organized in such a way that the data that you bring in, and I think I heard as much, but I just want to restate this or to understand it better, that the data you bring in with any sprint is sort of logically organized together to maybe a unit of functionality of some sort, such that when the sprint is complete, you can use a portion of SSP and you can see a portion of SSP working.
Right.
All right.
Exactly. So we start off with a base SSP configuration, which is really the person table and I think the term table. So after the first sprint, the people would be in there. So you'd be able to access students. Students would be able to log in. You wouldn't see any data on them yet, but you'd be able, the students are there. Usually the second is the main tool. So after that, you'd be able to see the dashboard, the details, the financial aid information. So yeah, every step along the way adds data and the corresponding configurations to those tools or to that data. Yep. Any other questions? Yes? I'm sorry, how much does that cost?
Yeah, what is the average cost where you come out to the client site and work with the client and such?
For an implementation that Unicon does, it varies. It really depends on a number of factors. So I couldn't give you a cost out of the box, but if you wanted to chat after this, I could probably understand what you're thinking and give you a ballpark what it costs. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. I'll be here for the rest of our time today and through about midday Wednesday. So if you have any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to sit down with you. Anything specific about the application that you'd like to see, love to sit down and show them to you or walk you through anything. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.